welcome to the Parent Advocacy resource team for all ages and stages of parenthood. I'm Irene Gouge, founder of Loving Lessons, Sleep Consulting, and Postpartum Doula Solutions, and your host here at PART, where we partner with parents to create a trusting network of professional services to provide families with proactive options when they navigate the journey of being a family through education, advocacy, empowerment, and connection. So I'm so excited to be here today with our guest. We have Kellie Syfan, and she shared with me one of the things she never thought her parents would say to her was, "Where did this fill in the blank come from?" And I'm excited to hear more about what that was that her parents were always telling her. So Kellie is the owner of Applied Behavioral Happiness and helps parents and families work through challenging behavior. Her focus is on supporting and not forcing change in kids by helping them make positive choices, develop skill sets, and improve their communication. Welcome, Kellie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so fill in the blank. Where did blank come from? What was that about?
So I was a little rescuer as a kid, which meant growing up in California, when the big rains would come through, I'd go out and rescue monarch butterflies, pretty innocuous. But then I would rescue pigeons and snakes and tarantulas and a bat and a hummingbird and pretty much you name it.
You were rescuing all these different animals. Where did you put them, out of curiosity?
Generally, I was pretty forward about them, which was a good skill at the time. You don't want to be hiding a snake in the house. But some of them were quite large. So, hey, mom, there's something in the bathtub. Don't worry, it'll be fine.
My God.
My poor mother.
That's so funny. I love it. So you were just a little rescuer from the beginning of all these little animals. That's
yes.
Awesome. Well, tell me a little bit about how you got involved in what you're doing with Applied Behavioral Happiness.
Sure. It's a bit of a funny story. It actually started with horses. So I was working a number of different ranches and got involved on a rescue ranch in Colorado. And there were wild horses as well as neglected and abused horses and other animals there that had been rescued. And we were partnering them up with therapy groups. And we had this amazing group of veterans with PTSD getting services, a group of kids from a group home, primarily sexual violence and gang violence caused their placement. And I loved it. And the people that worked there put together a group of kids that had all sorts of different special needs. And they go, okay, you lead this group. I'm sorry, like, oh yeah, you've got this master's in education, you'll do just fine. And I went, oh man, I'm not adequately trained to be able to provide everything that this group needs. And they were so gracious. These kids were amazing. They were kind, they were fun, and all my adequacies they made up for. I went very quickly to going, man, if I just had a little bit more training, I could do a lot more good. I could help a lot more people. So I started looking into where to get that training. Got into the field of behavior analysis, realized there's some problems with it. Science is good, but we can do it better. And that's where I decided it was time to make my own company.
Yeah. So Kellie, some of our families might not know what behavioral sciences is. So can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Absolutely. So ABA is Applied Behavior Analysis, and you can break it down into each of its parts. So behavior makes a lot of sense. It's what people do or an organism does. We've got behavior analysis. That's when we look at the behavior and analyze where it's coming from. And the applied part means applied to human lives. So it's the science of behavior applied to human lives to try to create positive differences.
Yeah, that's really, really great. And I love ABA methods. And I know there's a lot of different companies that do that. So tell me a little bit about like how that's different than other companies, because I think it's so cool that you were talking about like what you were learning and you were kind of thrown under the bus, it sounds like. A hands-on experience. And I love also that, we learn that kids are so gracious and forgiving.
Yes.
journey. And so tell me a little bit about what makes you different.
Certainly. So for years and years, I was in, classic ABA companies where we take insurance, we work with kids who have an autism diagnosis, we do programs that are set up in certain ways, and that's what you do. And it's pretty much the same company to company to company. It's all working toward insurance and doing their best to do the right thing. And what I noticed was, man, if we really brought kids choosing to make these changes, that support, don't force element, that, wow, kids really work hard. Like the kids that I worked with on that farm, they work hard, they try hard, they don't need to be fooled into anything. They don't need to be coerced into anything. They just need to be given the opportunity and the connection. Once you have that, there's so many beautiful things that can be done. Is it more complex? Absolutely, but it's worth it. And that's what really makes Applied Behavioral Happiness different. We're really looking for connection over everything else and letting kids choose the changes that they want to make.
That's interesting that you said support, don't force. That's an interesting concept. Can you tell me what that means a little bit more? I think I do know what it means, but I think it's one of those things, like it's something that we don't think about as parents.
Sure. So those moments where let's say you've got to get out the door. You have to get out the door right now, period. And quite often, especially if we're talking, say, toddlers, this is the perfect time to throw the biggest fit because there's time crunch and, it's the right time to throw the biggest tantrum we can think of. In that moment, we can choose to bribe through. Hey, if you just get in the car, I'll give you an ice cream. We can choose to threaten through. If you don't get in the car, you're losing this, that, or the other thing. Or if we are able in that moment, and this is both a skill set and a capacity in the moment thing, we can connect, try to figure out exactly what's going on and support through learning how to make that transition, create skill learning in that moment and have that skill for the next time. It's a different way of looking at how to get through the difficult situations and create more learning in those moments. Again, recognizing that sometimes we just don't have the capacity as the adult, and that's okay too. We're going to do our best on our best days, and we're going to make sure everybody's safe on our days where we're not 100%.
Yeah, that's really great. I think that it's interesting that you use that toddler analogy because I'm a former toddler preschool teacher, and it's like, we can't force them. We can't make them. They have their own little they are their own little beings. They have their little wills and they have preferences. And so it's really about having some tips and tricks, I think, up your sleeve of knowing how am I going to help you through this without tricking them. I think that was key too, because, a lot of times it feels like as parents, like in those moments, we get so worked up and I feel like I got to buy you something or do something for you. And that's not really what you're teaching with your programs.
Absolutely. Got to keep it as natural as possible. I don't get an M&M for walking out the door. It doesn't mean sometimes that's not a useful tool to use, but it's not natural. It's not what naturally happens. And if as often as possible, we can stick to what's natural and stick to making connections and focusing on the relationship, the better off we're going to be in the long run.
I love that you said about the relationship, and something earlier you said too was about that connection piece. I oftentimes will use the language connection before you disconnect, because a lot of times children can get very dysregulated pretty quickly and they may need some adult support. And sometimes we're on and sometimes we're not. And so, Kellie, do you work primarily with the child, with the parent? What does that look like if someone's working with you?
Sure. So I've got options for both. I've got some cases where I work primarily with the child, some cases where it's half and half, and somewhere I'm working primarily or only with the adults. That allows me to be able to serve more families and to meet a really diverse set of needs for different families.
So Kellie, if someone is looking to learn more about how they could work with you and like what it might look like, how could they find you?
So the best place to find me is to go to appliedbehavioralhappiness.com. You'll see request appointment buttons all over it. And those lead to a free discovery call. So a 30-minute consult where we talk about, hey, am I the right fit for you? Is there another service in the area or outside of the area even that would be the right fit for you? Make sure that my skill set matches your needs. Get a ton more information. We've got a great blog there We're also on social media, Facebook and Instagram, Applied Behavioral Happiness. There's a lot of different ways to touch base with us, and I just love being able to talk to parents.
Yeah. So tell me what you would see, like if a parent's watching this and they're like, I'm dealing with these situations. What are some of the situations that you might see that you would be able to help support a family with?
Certainly. So it's, as I said, very, very diverse. So really any behavioral challenge, I can have some strong and helpful input on. So everything from, man, where did the manners go during the pandemic? Or where did all this whining come from? You know, it's not, nobody's getting hurt because of these things, but they don't fit the what you want for your family. That's what I always tell people. There's no litmus test for normal or best or how it should be. What is right for your family? And if what you're experiencing right now doesn't fit that, okay, let's get some support and let's get you back to where you want to be. Doesn't matter where your neighbor wants to be, just where you want to be. From there, I've got kiddos that have a really severe trauma background or are engaging in some pretty intense behaviors, whether that is self-injury or aggression or inappropriate behaviors, say in public, all sorts of different things. So a pretty wide swath.
Wow. So Kellie, I know you mentioned when you first started telling us about how you got involved, you were doing like this with animals.
Mm-hmm.
You have a passion for animals. Do you incorporate any of that with your practices right now?
Not yet. It's on the list. So I hope in the long run that I can circle back and get that equine element or service dog element or what have you reintegrated. It's just one of those, it takes a while to get the infrastructure in place sort of things. And if I'm going to do it, I want to do it right. Now, I've got the knowledge on the behavior change side now. I want to make sure that I have everything set up well to be able to bring those elements back in when the time comes.
Great. So that's on the horizon, something
Yes.
coming soon with Kellie and the things she'll be able to support families with. So Kellie, parents are oftentimes burning out really fast. And so one of the things we try to do here with PART is share our best self-care tips. So do you have something that you would share that you find that's helpful for you and for parenting?
Absolutely. So the smallest and biggest tip that I have is just try to go outside whenever you can. There's a ton of different pieces to being outside that are helpful. Getting a little bit of sunlight, helping with your vitamin D intake, getting a little bit of that infrared coming through to help with your melatonin cycles. Just being able to be outside and get some fresh air. I like to joke we are glorified houseplants. If we stay in the house too long, completely shaded, we're not going to make it. We've got to go out and get some of that fresh sun, fresh air. And again, that sounds so perhaps cliche or, oh yeah, I've heard it before. And then if you start to track it, which a lot of my job is tracking behaviors, go, oh wait, I'm not even getting 30 minutes outside. Oh no. Again, if I was a plant, I'd be kind of wilty. Maybe that's the reason I'm feeling kind of wilty.
That is a great tip. That's one of my favorite tips to share with families as well. And I think that sometimes we forget, like, I think unfortunately the pandemic and the world we were living in kind of kept us indoors, and like, we have some habits that we might need to make a change. And sometimes just that environment change of being outdoors.
Yes.
Can make a huge impact.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially with kids, got to run them out, get them out there as much as you can.
Great. And you know what? One thing that I forgot to ask, Kellie, what ages are the children that you work with?
Certainly. So my youngest I usually bring in are around 2. I have worked with kids younger than 2, but usually 2 is about the limit that I go to on the young side. And then I work with parents, of course, of all ages and grandparents. But most of my direct care kids are going to top out around 17, 18.
Well, Kellie, it has been an absolute pleasure about learning about you and Applied Behavioral Happiness. I love that name. It brings a lot of joy just saying it.
Perfect.
So thank you so much for being here with Parent Advocacy Resource Team, where we partner to navigate the journey of being a family through education, advocacy, empowerment, and connection. We look forward to connecting soon. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.